This is Robert Clotworthy, and you are listening to Oak Island Plus, a discussion of Oak Island and other mysteries from around the world. Here are your hosts, James McQuiston, Oak Island theorist and author, along with John Hamels, PhD and historical researcher. Get the whole story right here, brought to you by Rabbit Hole Investigations.
Hey, here we are, Oak Island Plus, episode
7. Whoa!
Yeah. We're up to around 13,000 viewers and several hundred subscribers, and
well over 400, almost 450 now. Yeah.
This guy about every week he takes an Excel file and he plots us, and every gauge that he plots is going up. And so we haven't had a single thing go down.
No, and we thank you for sharing our episodes, and we're being seen around the world, Jim. Yeah. You know, I see lots of folks from different places, and our Facebook page is growing as well. Yep. You know, Jim, on our Facebook page last week, I put out a little teaser. Did you happen to notice it?
Yeah.
Okay, so it said Jim and I are working on a surprise guest for episode 7 that we're going to be doing here shortly, and I put or not, and it was O-R-E, and I don't know if anybody caught that's watching, but the or was spelled O-R-E, and it's referencing what we're going to be talking about today.
Because we are going to be talking about the Wizard of Ox, the Oxman himself, Carmen Legge. He's going to be with us any minute here, and we're looking for some real insight on Oak Island and New Ross and that whole area up there and his life.
And what the metal oars, the shoes that were being used were oxen and so forth that we see every week on Oak Island.
Yeah, he's an expert on oxen.
Yeah. So I guess we're going to get him online right here.
Oh, yeah, but one thing, next month, we thought rather than do a year in review, we would do a yearly update, and we'd take any episode where we found some substantially new information, we would talk about that. So it would be in chunks for different episodes. But what happens is we get emails and posts on the website.
And our own research, right?
Yeah, and it just keeps growing and growing. So we hate to leave those dangling conversations. So somehow we're going to figure out a way to do an update on most of our past shows, wherever it's important, and then next year we're going to kick right into some real exciting new shows.
Yeah. And remember, we always say we're the history guys. We're doing the historical background, and that's what we're getting here: historical facts that we didn't know about in the background to the story of the Curse of Oak Island.
And so many people have stories, and so many people have documents.
Yeah, it's coming in.
And so it's been great, and so I think we should
Let's get Carmen.
Let's get Carmen.
Okay. So with no further ado, we're going to be zooming with Carmen Legge. Stay tuned.
Hello, Carmen.
Hi there, Jim. Hi, John. How are you?
Good.
Oh, you got you on the screen. We're doing great.
Would you rather be called Dr. Hamels?
You just call me Doc. It's fine.
Okay, Doc. I like Doc. I've been called Doc a good many times because I can fix anything.
Well, you know, this is a little bit of a reunion. You guys don't really probably realize it, but the first book you both helped me on was my Oak Island and New Ross. Doc helped me with the painting, and you helped me with understanding New Ross and the old Charing Cross name and all that. So that's pretty cool. So speaking of books, we're going to put up on the screen here for a minute your book on oxen.
All right.
There it is right there. And there you are walking down a little trail with a couple of oxen.
Yes, that was at the Ross Farm Museum.
How long has that been out?
The book was done in 2010. I think it came out in 2012.
Oh, okay. So just so the audience knows, I mean, probably everybody half around the world knows you, but can you tell us just a little bit about yourself and where you came from and all that?
Well, I was born it'll be 63 years ago this coming April, here in Blue Mountain, which if you dropped a pin from the sky and you put it in the middle of Nova Scotia, you'd be on top of my house.
Oh,
That's mainland Nova Scotia, not
yeah.
Cape Breton Island, but the mainland Nova Scotia would be on top of my house. So I grew up here, and I basically live in the same house I grew up in,
That's cool.
which is not many people can say that.
No, no.
The family farm down the road on both sides that belonged to my grandparents was in the family for four on one side, 5 generations on the other side. So that was 640 acres in total. So I got rid of that probably be 12 years ago now.
So did you start out with the occupation of blacksmith, or did you
No,
start doing cutlass and switch gears?
well, there was a community blacksmith just up the road about a mile.
Oh,
He was also a Legge. He was Dad's cousin. So, you know, when I was 8, 9, 10 years old, I would hang around there and I see the sparks fly and the oxen pooping all over the place and so on. But I didn't really pay a whole lot of attention to it. But there was some fascination there, and I paid attention to what was going on. But I didn't, you know, at that time I didn't study it, thinking that I was going to be one someday. Up until 1975, we lived the life of the royal family farm. Like, mind you, it was 640 acres in total, so there was a lot of work to be done. But up until 1975, I kind of lived the old way and so on. And
so
just, you know,
would you say that that's how you learned a lot about old metal artifacts and stuff? I mean, is that, would that be part of your education on that?
I would say half of my knowledge comes from the actual use of these items. Uh, you know, you can imagine what it's like 5 generations from the late 1700s all the way up to now. A lot of the artifacts would be kept. They'd be thrown in a bucket or a tub or in the back of the barn or something, and I'd pick it up. What's this, Uncle Ted? What's this, Uncle Mel? You know, and they explain it to me what it was and how the items kind of changed design, shape over the years, and he would also, or I should say, my uncles a lot would compare the items that they used at one time with the items they were still using. Mind you, this is prior to 1975. After 1975, and then machines kind of took over, and we farmed more the modern way. But growing up, being forced into learning how to use these items, you begin to appreciate, you know, how they're made, how they're used, how at what point they become worn out and all this stuff. And it sticks with me. I have OCD, which kind of, I have to know what these items are. And I guess, you know, 40 years down the road, it benefit me.
Speaking of that, the next picture that we're going to show here, I was really excited to see this on the show because you guesstimated, educated guess that this was a Scottish ox shoe from around 1610, which of course fits my theory exactly. Is that the only item that you could point to that you specifically thought was Scottish, or are there other items laying around that we just never got to talk about?
Not until this season is over.
Oh, all right. That's a good tease.
Yeah. Besides that shoe, there was a couple other little items that escapes my mind now that I thought were Scottish. And the time period was somewhere between 1610 and 1635. I don't know if that fits your theory, but
I absolutely love it. We're both smiling over that. So what would you say, like the oldest? I know they found some old coins, but disregarding those, just metal utilitarian products, what would you say the oldest artifact that you handled might have been? I mean, do you see things from the 1300s, the 1400s?
yeah, what comes to mind right away is the rock drill sharpening swage.
Oh yeah.
That was extremely old. I would say at least in the 1500s. Really, really old. Yeah, it was crude, but it was well made. But it wasn't um, the elements that made up the item was, first of all, it was done in charcoal. It wasn't done in plain coal. It was done in a really primitive kiln, and the item was very. It served a purpose, but it wasn't made good enough to any extended use or anything like that. So it was really, really old. Yeah.
And they can,
I've seen swages, but this one was, it was cruder. It was, um, I'm trying to remember, that's probably 6 or 7 years ago now, but it was just basically much older than anything made in the 1600s.
and they can judge that by the amount of carbon in the steel. Is that how
Well, the elements in the item depends on manganese, magnesium, phosphorus,
Oh.
carbon, silicone, iron, of course, aluminum, especially the aluminum and phosphorus. Any old iron items that have phosphorus into it usually indicates English.
Hey, Jim, I got a question for Carmen to follow up. Carmen, you said when you were growing up, you had all these different tools from different ages. Do you think some of that explains why we're seeing all these different tools from different years in different countries? Because these guys would just kind of hang on to these tools over time?
Yeah, with the items I've been shown that came from the island, I can see 5 distinct time periods. 3 before the discovery of the money pit, and 2 after. A lot of the activity that took place on the island, as Jim can probably back up, took place in the 1600s.
Yes.
Some of the other activities took place in the 1700s, both before the discovery of the money pit.
Mm-hmm.
However, there is a few artifacts that suggest, and not only artifacts, but different scientific studies and scans and X-rays and all this stuff. That's beyond me. I'm just a traditional blacksmith. But it indicates a late 1400 activity as well. So there's 3 time periods before, and of course after the discovery of the money pit in the 1800s. There was a lot of work and a lot of searching,
Makes
and
sense.
in the 1900s.
Mm-hmm.
Did you find anything metallic that might point to the Portuguese at all?
Not me personally. There have been some items that suggest that they came from a Portugal origin. But me personally, I have found things from Spain and
Really?
Basque Country.
That's right between Spain and France, right?
It's kind of like northern Spain.
Yeah. I think they said there were Basque fishermen they know of for sure along the
Yeah,
coast.
the Basque fishermen were here in the 1400s, late 1400s.
Somebody told me they found 2 Basque ships in the bay in front of Halifax.
Oh, is that right?
They had dove on, but because of the treasure trove laws, if they dove on them in the 70s, too bad, because you can't do anything now.
Yeah, that's right.
Tell
Yeah.
people's stories.
I know the Basque fishermen visited the Bay of Fundy as well. The oldest coin in Nova Scotia was found on the Bay of Fundy.
Really?
Yeah.
What was that?
I can't remember the coin, but I know it was in the late 1400s.
Okay.
I was shown the coin. I actually held it in my hands.
And we have this other last picture that I just found this the other day, and it's showing them taking cargo, some kind of cargo, apparently off a small tender type boat. I think they called them panasses back then, and throwing it right into an ox cart, and the oxen are standing in the water, and appeared to be headed to shore. So I never thought about that for Oak Island, but there certainly would be places where the oxen could wade out, 100 feet or something, and a small boat could pull up with treasure on it or product on it or something and load it onto the wagon and take it right up the Stone Road or somewhere. Does that ring a bell, or does that sound?
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that that's one of the main advantages of Oxman. They can wade right out into the water, and you could unload your boat directly. You didn't have to, unload it into a smaller boat that you could get into shallow water and then wade out and so on. The Oxman are able to go into fairly deep water, up to about halfway their torso, their body, and then they don't get freaked out. They don't get agitated or nervous or whatever. You can't do that with a horse. The horse will, panic. So that was one of the main advantages of Oxman.
This is a new discovery for Oak Island, because I've never heard anybody talk about this, but this is a painting from Normandy from the 17th century, I think.
Yeah,
it doesn't really matter where it's at. It's the same.
It's a very, very common thing to have happen with the Oxman. Would go right out into the water and take the cargo off of the ships and so on and so forth. Very common thing, but it's just as history gets passed down, that sort of aspect gets lost. I'm glad to see the picture of the painting, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Because, it was a major part of life at one time, but it just, maybe I might be a little biased, but Oxman to me, one of the reasons why I wrote the book, Oxman to me was very important in the development of any country, especially here in North America. But if that would have been horses, you probably would have seen a lot of paintings of horses. A lot of people think horses are a better looking creature than an ox. Not in my opinion. An ox is a magnificent beast. It would do all that work. It would go out into the water and not get frightened. It would go places where if you took a horse in, it would panic, you get hurt, or you end up with a horse with broken legs, which is no good. An ox can survive on very poor food. I mean, if you have a bunch of meadow grass somewhere, like the swamp in the Oak Island, you could keep some oxen alive very well. You couldn't do that with horses.
Well, you made a really good point there, that it was part of daily life, and that was probably for 200 or 300 years, and yet all we have is a painting and maybe a ox shoe here or there or something. So people look at it as a one-off deal.
Oh yes,
actually happened maybe thousands of times.
Yeah, well, we know oxen were used in water for at least 6,000 years.
Oh wow!
So, hey Jim, if I could jump in a little bit, you and I have talked about the oxen, and we've also talked about that whole stone road situation. Carmen, what's your feel on that road could have been for drying fish, the cod and all that, rather than necessarily a early road? It could have been just because we've seen a lot of research where they were drying fish up that way, out on the rocks.
I have two views on that. I've seen the stone road. It's very rough, and oxen would have a hard time traveling over that road. However, when the road was in use, if it was a road, let's say, we'll assume it was a road, the road would have a covering of sod on there and ground, and it would have been leveled out. Over the years, that kind of washed out and left the solid rock underneath. However, like I said, the rock was too rough for oxen to walk on any, repeated use.
Mm-hmm.
However, I do believe it was a road, but when it was used, it would have had a covering of ground and grass and sod and tree and limbs and so on top of it. So, if you're going to travel back and forth on that particular area, you need a road, you need some solid base, which the rocks would be. For drying fish, I can't see it because it's not it's not laid off in a grid or anything. It's a road that leads somewhere.
Gotcha. Okay.
So could it have been like it, especially if it was covered with sod, a place for like Mi'kmaq to bring their canoes full of beaver pelts and Europeans to bring their tenders full of cloth, linen, and wool, and they could do a powwow right there on that area. And the only reason I wonder about that is because both Mi'kmaq artifacts and European artifacts were found at the same, essentially within feet of each other. And it almost seemed like it was a meeting place there that could have taken place.
Yeah, that's very possible. Yeah. very possible.
Doc, didn't you have a question about the Templars or something?
Right. We were gonna. Do you know anything about the Knights of Malta or the Templars being involved with that area?
No, except for all the evidence, artifacts and other things included. I have never seen anything yet that suggests that the Templars were not there. There was no evidence to say that they weren't there.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen things that some people would interpret that they were there, but in my opinion, I can only go as far as say the Templar theory has some plausibility because I've never seen anything there that persuade me that they weren't.
Okay.
Well,
We've connected the Templars to the Knights Baronet to the Freemasons. Have you seen anything regarding the Knights Baronet?
No.
Okay.
What about Freemasons? I guess. Oh, well, they did find
Well,
that.
the only thing I found fascinating is I don't know about the last couple of years, but for several years in a row, they always close the island down and give an exclusive tour to the Masons.
Uh-huh.
Why?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, then they did find that one T-square there that coincidentally dated right back to my year of 1632. I was smiling when Craig said that, but I know there's always a range on those items. You know, that
Yes.
I believe it used to be like 75 years either way, and now it's down to like 25 years either way. I guess they
Yeah.
had it.
As time goes on the island, this is the 11th season. The guys are always looking for that definitive thing that kind of narrows down the time frame. I find it, we're still looking for that one definitive item. A lot of the items I can date to, like a 50-year range.
Yeah.
A lot of the items I have to go to 200-year range because they didn't change much over time. A can opener is a can opener, and it doesn't change too much. But nails change styles over a period of time. Hinges change style, door handles, things like that change style. And again, my specialty is German, French, and English from the 1600s to the present.
Well, that's a good choice right there.
Yeah, it's only because Nova Scotia has all three cultures.
So
Well,
we're running out of time.
Yeah, go ahead, Doc.
We really got a couple minutes left, Carm. Do you have a favorite theory? I know it's putting you out on a limb, but as far as, what's going on?
Oh, I would say over the last, I think I've been involved with the show for the last 8 years. Probably seen 600-700 artifacts. Of all the things I've seen, I know that there was activity on a grand scale there. I know there was mining, tunneling, digging, earthworks, stuff like that. With all the tools and artifacts I've seen, I still don't exactly know what was going on there. I do have a theory. I don't know whether I should keep it to myself or
No, please don't tell us.
Well, I guess it wouldn't matter. Yeah, I guess it wouldn't matter. My theory is when the French came over here by Duke de Gonville,
Yeah,
to sort of rectify their trouble that they had with the English, I'll put it that way. And I think he had something like, I don't know, 13,000 men and 64 ships or whatever sort of thing. But, because of bad luck and ill timing and I guess the Duke wasn't much of a leader, and typhoid fever. There was only, I think, around 3,000 or 4,000 that hobbled back to France. They were reduced to about 20 ships or something like that. I know I'm not exact on that number, but the point is, they didn't put the beating on the English that they were going to. Typhoid at that time was misunderstood. They didn't know exactly where it came from, how to deal with it. They knew it was very deadly. So you have these contaminated ships, boats, The men who have died on the ships, you can't throw them in the water because that would just contaminate the water, and that's where they thought typhoid fever came from in the first place. So what do you do with all their clothes or belongings or their books, papers, jewelry, items, whatever, right? My theory is, this might be far-fetched, but it is these bodies and their belongings, their books, their paraphernalia and watches, jewelry, whatever. What are you going to do with all these? Well, you take one ship and you designate it to go around to all the other ships and pull upside. You got any dead bodies today? Yeah, we got 3 or 4. So you dump them on the ship with their clothing, their belongings, their books, their leather shoes, whatever. What are you going to do with them? Well, because of the natives, we know of an island that has a big hole in it. What we'll do is we'll take it to the island, we'll dump it down the hole. Can't dump it in the water because then that just spread the typhoid, right? So they take it to the island, they build a road up to the money pit, and they start dumping it down in there. After a while, with all these bodies and paraphernalia things down there start to stink. So every 10 feet, you have to plank it over and seal it with coconut fiber so it don't smell. And then you keep dumping some more bodies in, and then you dump some more bodies. Of course, as you're doing this, you have to have flood tunnels because you don't want somebody coming back and discovering this, thinking it's a treasure, and they're going to end up with more outbreak of typhoid fever, right? So you just keep dumping these bodies in until it gets all filled up, and the survivors limp back home to France, and money pits covered over. They left a block and tackle there, but what's the big deal? It's not a treasure. It's just, a bunch of dead bodies and all their belongings.
Well, that was a real problem too. When ships would come over to Philadelphia, they had to wait offshore for 2 weeks for doctors to go over and check everybody out and let them come ashore in groups that they checked out that didn't have typhoid or something like that. Yeah. And of course, scurvy was also a real problem. And yeah. I have this crazy theory that Samuel Ball was growing cabbage so he could make sauerkraut out of it.
Yeah.
Sauerkraut cures scurvy.
Scurvy, yes, that's right. Sauerkraut with a lot of vitamin C in it.
And the guy that proved that was Captain James Cook, and he was stationed in Halifax for quite a while. I have his logbook from Halifax, but he only logged in from the Halifax going up to Newfoundland. He didn't log anything south into Mahone Bay or Oak Island, which was a disappointment. But
yeah, was that unintentional or was it done on purpose?
There you go. It was their conspiracy. He didn't want anybody to know.
You're a master mariner. You keep good records, right?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, you don't, not keep good records. There has to be a reason for that.
And also, it's quite possible that he named some of the islands, the early names of islands in Mahone Bay that have since been changed, because some of the early names are similar to names that he used the rest of the way around the world. He went around the world 3 times, dying the 3rd time. So there's so much history that you just have to piece it together here and there in a patchwork quilt. In fact, I read once that it's like looking at a quilt, a tapestry through the back of it, and you're trying to figure out what happened.
It's a very daunting task to try to put the pieces together. I know that there's a major North American history that took place on Oak Island. Yes. How they'll ever put the piece together, I know you've done a lot of work, and there'll be more revelations about your work as well as we go on. But still, I don't know how they're going to do this.
Yeah, and it has to be, like from my point of view, some days I get frustrated, but you got to imagine they have 20 different points of view like mine, and they're looking all these different directions. And I'd say the thing that has impressed me the most about Rick is he can easily compartmentalize a theory. He can say, okay, this theory, I'm going to ignore Jim's theory because right now I'm listening to Scott Clark's theory, and he can give everything a fair hearing, but of course I'm only going to ever believe mine. And I think Doc's on the line here too with it, but well, I'll tell you, this has been great having you on. And I don't know, Doc, you have any other questions there?
Give me some more questions. I'm having fun.
I just have one question, and it's like, why are there so many tunnels? Do you think they ever mined Oak Island for any minerals other than burying something? Were they trying to take something out?
Well, there is limestone deposit. I can't remember the name right now. Anschweiss or Anschweiss.
Make up a word. We would know.
But anyway, that can be used to make sculpture. But no, in my opinion, the mining and the tunneling, then I won't say on Oak Island, I would say in that area, didn't have anything to do with minerals or elements or anything that they were digging out. No, not in my opinion. No.
Okay, I'm just trying to figure out why there's so many tunnels.
And
Yeah.
you
I can't comment on. I can't comment on what I know about tunnels.
Okay.
tell us everything you know. We won't tell anybody.
Yeah. YouTube is a very small world.
Well, Gilbert Hedden and Les McPhee and Graham Harris, which are probably all names you know of, they all were engineers. I'm not sure Hedden was actually an engineer, but I know his dad was. But they all say that from what they've seen, that they can actually prove is there, it could have been done in one summer season with a small crew of like 50 guys, because they think that legend has elaborated on how big it is underground, and also that the limestone can deteriorate underground and create a cavity that appears that maybe it was man-made at some time. And I know a lot of times they put the cameras down and it's pretty rugged down there. It looks like I've been in these caves that are under islands over here on Lake Erie, and they're rough looking down there. It's not man-made for sure. But,
I like your theory, Jim, about under islands.
About other islands.
Well, I didn't say that. Oh. I like your theory about under islands.
Oh, okay. Because over on the west end of Lake Erie, there's one island in particular there that you can actually pay to go down into the cave underneath it. And they have all kinds of stories about Lake Erie pirates used to hide their booty down in there and all this, and they've actually found there's objects down in there. We don't know how they got in there. Maybe they put them in there for the tourists. I don't know, but it is kind of wild to be down in those things. And so I think there's such a potpourri of things that happened both by humans and by nature that, like you said just a few minutes ago, it's going to be, how are they ever going to sort it out?
Yeah, and you brought up a point, Jim, about islands are surrounded by water, so that's going to limit some people nosing around. Also, if you have an island that has known caves on it, which natives would certainly know, it's hard work digging a tunnel or a mine. It's hard work. So if you can find a place that's already been hollowed out by nature or whatever, you're going to utilize that and continue on with your own plans on how you're going to dress it up. I feel that Oak Island is sort of along the same lines as that too, as well. The only thing is, when limestone mixes with water, it becomes like a mush, right? So the danger is, once you put something down there, it can shift, it can drop, it can move. And that has already been established by Marty discovering I think it was a $2 coin, a toonie, that came out of a different spot than he put it in.
Well, they have those legends in the lower 48s here where people like Jesse James, they took over an existing tunnel system or a cave system, and that's where they hid their booty, their stolen treasures. So it just makes sense. It probably happened over in Europe for hundreds of years before anybody found America.
Oh, sure.
Why not use a natural cave? Well, look at the things in the Holy Land that were in the
catacombs and that,
and those ones that were in those bases. Why can't I think of the name of them?
That's
early versions of the Bible.
Yeah,
those were all hidden away in in the
Yes.
cave. So yeah, it's just something that humans do. We forget a lot of times what they did. They did it for centuries.
Yeah,
And we get one little hint, and then we go, "Oh yeah, well look at it's
that's
like
right.
something in the water."
The other thing I found interesting that I didn't think was followed up much on, not yet anyway. Do you remember a couple of years ago the scene where they found a bone in the money pit and they scanned it, and it was a Middle Eastern man?
Yeah.
Right. Hmm.
Do you have any theories on how he got there?
Well, there was mix of like even the French had a Portuguese pilot on their, Samuel de Champlain had a Portuguese guy with him. So I think there was a lot more mix between the countries than what, especially with the Crusaders going down to the Holy Land all the time. They could bring people home with them. I understand that there were more than just two bones. One was European and one was Middle Eastern, but
That's right.
I learned from a pretty reliable source that there were 6, I believe. But I was told that they didn't pursue it anymore because they weren't sure whether this was a burial ground or not. And they didn't want to, dig there if that's what it was. That was an H8. Remember that H8 drill that they did? That's also where that parchment came up. And that would all fit with your theory. If that was a burial ground of diseased people and diseased items that they owned,
That's right.
perfectly.
The only problem people have told me about the theory that I've expressed is that there should be more bones.
Yeah.
I'm thinking again back to limestone mixed with water, it changes and it moves and it dissolves, and maybe they were lucky to find those 6 bones.
Yeah, and 400 years of deteriorating.
Yeah, and they found
shoes
and different
because
things.
the bones themselves were not in. They weren't like a perfect femur or anything. They were random chunks of bones. So,
And that's another thing that's fascinating about Oak Island. You get a little piece of bone. Where's the rest of the body? You get one. A door doesn't just have one hinge, right? Or you get one nail. Well, one nail is not going to build a barn. And why is it you always find one of in places where you should find dozens of them, or any item you do find is broke.
Oh, that's true too. It's all like thrown away.
Coming up this season, Carmen, are you going to be on?
Pardon?
Do they have you on in season 11?
Oh yes, Yeah, we just finished up there a couple of days ago.
Oh, super.
Yeah, I'll be on probably season 11 as often as I have been.
Okay.
I have to tell you the day we met.
I think Jim will be too.
I have to tell you that the day we met there at the Oak Island Resort, it was funny because I was waiting for you. I didn't know you had a Corvette, and right in front of you, a truck pulled in, and I thought, "Oh, that's Carmen." I've been sitting there in the lobby there waiting because we weren't allowed to go anywhere because of COVID. And that truck pulled in, and then I see a vet pull in, and I thought, well, that's certainly not Carmen. And then you pull over and you get out of your vet. So that is so cool that you're riding around in class.
Yeah, I still have it, but right now it's snowing, so his Corvette's put away for the winter.
Oh yeah. It's snowing up there now.
It's snowing right now, yeah. Oh. But it's very cold, windy, and blowing snow. It won't last, but it's kind of yucky out.
Yeah. Well, it sure is a beautiful place you folks live in. If it wasn't for the deer fly and the bitter cold in the middle of, of the winter, that would be absolute paradise with all those islands and sea coast and the mountains and everything.
Very beautiful up here. We have 4 seasons. We don't get tired of one season. You switch over into another one. You wait 3 months and it switches back, and so on. Where I live, it's only an hour to the sea, and do all kinds of things. It's only an hour to Halifax. It's only an hour to the valley, where arguably it is the most diverse, history-rich valley in all of Nova Scotia. Oh, sorry, in all of North America.
Is that the Annapolis Valley?
Yeah.
Yeah, because so many people were there.
Yeah.
I think my theory too about the strict treasure trove laws is that there were so many nationalities there. You have the Mi'kmaq, and you have the French, potentially Portuguese or Basque, the English, and so
Canadians.
you risk digging up somebody else's legacy or history in your backyard, and so it's understandable that they are reluctant to have people do a bunch of digging. And the just a couple of years ago was the 400th anniversary of the naming of Nova Scotia and essentially the founding by William Alexander, and yet it didn't seem like they wanted to do any celebration. I talked with the Historical Society and the government, and it just didn't seem like anything was going on, unless something I didn't. But it was like, let a sleeping dog lie type thing.
Right now, Jim, we're going through a period of cancel culture, and like Governor Lawrence and Cornwallis and so on. There's not a whole lot of acknowledgement or celebration, especially not celebration of those men who, discovered Nova Scotia or built Nova Scotia, developed Nova Scotia. It's sort of not talked about too much these days.
And you say that valley's the most has the most history. I think Nova Scotia does, because it was the gateway to America. You went over the top, you went down to St. Lawrence across the Great Lakes, or you came down the front and you went down to Cape Cod and Virginia and the West Indies and all that. And even after the Revolution and the line was drawn, the demarcation line was drawn, they still negotiated over Nova Scotia for years, for decades, because both sides wanted that valuable chunk of land there, and it was valuable because of its location.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Also, we know the Vikings were here in North America shortly after 1000, and that's in Newfoundland. Well, there's not much stretch of the imagination that they didn't come down the south, down the shore to Nova Scotia and beyond, right? So I kind of you read the history of explorers who came over here. They had a map to go by, right? And I always found that kind of curious as to where did the map come from, right? So there had to have been a lot of explorers to this land. Once they got here, they would realize how valuable it is and where it's situated. And Louisburg, for example, was the greatest city in this part of North America at one time.
Well, and the other thing too is a lot of the early communities just disappeared.
Oh yeah.
You always hear of Roanoke here in the United States, but there were some in Maine that were established and then just disappeared. They don't know where the people went, and other ones they scooted back to England or Scotland because they couldn't make it. That's one thing that gets me about William Alexander's Port Royal thing, is that he did not fail. His settlement there didn't fail. It was King Charles I that pulled the rug out from underneath him and gave Nova Scotia back to the French. But there's
all politics.
There's an indication that he had up when the ships were at port, that he had up to 2,000 people in Annapolis in that gut there, Digby Gut, is it called? Yeah. I think, and because it takes 400 to 800 people to run a ship, a big man of war. So anyway, wow, this is just so great, and we've learned a lot. And
yeah, for sure.
Anything you would want our viewers to know special about Carmen Legge?
I find that as time goes on, the younger generation now, I'll be almost 63 in April. By younger generation, I'm thinking anybody below 40. In my opinion, history is starting to not be revered and not studied as much as it should be. And maybe in this time we're having in this modern world, it would be good if they went back and studied history a little bit more, and God forbid, don't repeat the mistakes we made back then.
Well, and truthfully, that's the reason I wrote all of my books, because royalties on books are pretty minimal for the amount of time you spend on them. But the first two were recommended by the Oak Island people for the same reason, because they said, we've been sharing all this information via email and it's just going to be lost. All this research. Then by the third book, I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to do all this research and throw it in the garbage can. So I just kept on writing them, but I did get kind of burnt out. But Doc jumped in from Oak Island, New Ross onward, and you helped with that one, and so did Tim and Alessandra and Steve Guptill and some people over in England. So that was probably one of the easier ones because I had so many people backing me up. But anyway, yeah, I agree with you.
And Carmen, that's why we're doing this very podcast, is because Jim and all of us have come up with all this history that's not being told on any platform.
It is very important to keep history alive. And also, in my aspect, I want to keep the skills and the knowledge alive as well. Beating out a set of hinges, it's got nothing to do with the modern computer age, but I still think it's important to be able to have people out there that can beat out a pair of hinges.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a wonderful quest, both what you and we are doing and what they're doing on Oak Island, trying to resolve the issues, whether they ever will or not. They're adding to the story. So we just all keep working together on this, and someday we'll be able to write this giant book of about 7,000 pages.
Another book, Jim.
All right. Well, thank you so much, sir.
Very good.
Absolute pleasure, Carmen.
Very good. I also want to mention I have a book coming out this winter.
Yeah.
Last winter, but communication with the publisher shut down, so I had to go another avenue. So hopefully this winter I'll have a book out as well.
On Oxman, or?
No, it's just a novel
Oh,
it'll be comedy.
Oh,
really?
Another side to you.
You need to talk. You need to confer with Doc, because he's an actor and a comedian and everything. I mean, he just is a Renaissance man in that area. So, well, good luck with it.
Very good.
Well, we'll see you on the big screen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think the first episode was last night, wasn't it?
Yeah, it
Yes.
was. Yeah.
See it?
Yep.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
And
I love the mention of the 1600s for sure. Everything's moving so fast. I always call it the MTV version of the history, because the quick turns of the head, and here's something wonderful, but you don't hear about it again for the next 3 episodes or whatever, and I know that they're trying to keep people interested. The producers are, and Prometheus is so great. They all have been great. I haven't had a sour moment with any of them up there. They're
great to work with.
Yeah.
Great fun.
All right. Well, you take care. Have a good day.
I was just in the process of setting up a blacksmith shop for a fellow in the neighborhood. So I ran home and I got on here, and now I'm going to go back and try to finish it up.
Well, thanks for hanging in with us with this technology. You wouldn't believe what we were doing about a half hour before we got you on. I'm having all kinds of network issues and so forth, and we're not where we're not in our homes. We're in another site, and so, anyways, we made it work. So
I think it went well.
Right. You take care.
All right. Well, take care, buddy. I hope to see you in person again someday.
Very good. See ya.
Okay. Bye-bye now.
Holy cow, Jim! Was that a lot of fun or what?
Oh my God.
Carm is quite a reservoir of information.
It's no wonder he's so popular. He's on podcasts and everything all the time, and we're so proud that he agreed to come on ours. I met him back in 2021.
Yeah, that's what you.
And he isn't afraid to say what he's thinking about
Not at all. And
stuff,
I loved his theory and the things that he said. And, you know, he was doing a little pushback on some things. And that was pretty interesting. I also thought that it was interesting that he was talking about how important the oxen were in the history of Oak Island and Nova Scotia and the whole era that we haven't really covered before. I think I'm going to go down that rabbit hole.
Well, you know, and he made a point, he didn't say it quite like this, but things that were mundane for centuries, things that happened for centuries, we now just find a little artifact and we try to guess what it was. But it was standard operating procedure for a long, long time. And so the people that are in the know about that particular subject, like he is about oxen, he can tell such a bigger story of it, you know, and
the behind the scenes.
So,
Jim, when you were all done talking with Carm, the three of us were chatting, how did you feel about your theory and the research that we've done together? You know, did you feel stronger about what you've come up with?
Well, I'm not going to give up on it. I think his theory is obviously interesting, and his theory would work with my time slot. It would actually work with anybody's time slot. There were typhoid and Black Death
I hadn't even thought of that.
Time. And but the limestone being down there eating away at leather or bones or whatever
destroying
would
evidence
make a lot of sense. So I like the way he said, "Did you watch it last night?" 'Cause this is the day after it was on, episode 1, and we said, "Yeah," and he said, "What do you think?" And I said, "Well, I loved hearing the 1600s."
Definitely, and that's our time slot. You know?
Yeah. So I think he added some really neat perspective.
Right. It's given me some areas to research further on my end.
Here we go down more rabbit holes.
Well, Jim, I think we had a really a fun time with Carmen. What do you say? I want to do a special thanks, as always, to Innovation Studio here in Westfield, New York, and my man Randall Burt, who's on the other side of the camera. He travels with me from another studio where we do Chautauqua Sunrise, and this will be featured on Access Chautauqua through Spectrum 1301 pretty soon, probably in a week or two. And so I'm going to say goodbye to everybody, and I'll let you finish up.
Goodbye, folks. Keep watching. We got lots of plans for the future.
And check our Facebook page and on YouTube.
Yes. Bye-bye.
This is Robert Clotworthy, and you have been listening to Oak Island Plus, a discussion of Oak Island and other mysteries from around the world. Be sure to catch every episode.